I'm going to take you through another arm routine, the one that I did today, for you to apply to your own training. Try it out for yourself. This structure of arm training has led to a lot of growth for me, and maybe it can do the same for you. If you're looking for additional routines and a little bit more guidance with growing your pythons, then my arm course is always available. But as always, you need to bring the consistency and the intensity, and you don't necessarily need any program. But if you're serious about your arm growth, I think it will help to make your efforts more effective and more efficient. Also, I need to quickly update you guys on my attempt to lose 15 pounds of fat in a month. So March 12th or 11th, I weighed 220. Today, I weighed in April 12th, 218. This is what the physique looks like. And, I will say, of course, it's an epic failure. And it could have been easy to not update, but I'm going to be honest and real with you. I didn't do what I needed to do to get all the way down to 205 and lose 15 pounds, but I think I gained, let's say, 2 pounds of muscle. My arms grew. I'm back to training my legs consistently after having a toe injury for like a couple months. So let's say I added 2 pounds of muscle, lost 2 pounds total. So that means I lost 4 pounds of fat. All right. Now moving forward, my goal for the next month is going to be to get down to 210. So to drop from 218, I was 217 yesterday. So 217, 218, down to 210 pounds. So 7-8 pounds of fat in the next month is going to be the goal. But the whole gosh dang reason you came and clicked on this video is to get your hands, get your grimy little mitts on a sleeve busting, python growing, pipe daddy routine. All right. So here's what I did exactly, set by set. You can copy it yourself, try it out, and see if it gives you the same kind of growth that it's given me. So you're going to superset your triceps and your biceps, as always. For the triceps, I'm doing the overhead dumbbell triceps extension, but you could pick any triceps exercise that you like. There's nothing that specifically beneficial of one exercise over another. I do recommend you do a number of warm-up sets where, in this case, my working weight is a 122-pound dumbbell. I start with less than 50% of my working weight with my first warm-up. So I grab the 45, and I'm just doing like 4 to 6 reps. I don't want to fatigue myself, and I'm warming up my elbows. I'm warming up my joints. I'm focusing on my cues, and I'm making sure that everything feels good. And for me, I do like probably 6 or 7 warm-up sets for my tricep exercise. Maybe it's a little overkill, but if you want to train with high intensity, which I encourage you to do if you're serious about growth, doing a number of warm-up sets is a way to get the most out of those sets and minimize your injury, because it allows you to screen for any problems you may be having in any of your joints on that given day. And it also allows you to ramp up your nervous system so that by the time you get to that working set, you're primed like an animal ready to burst out of the freaking cage and assault the metal and rubber dumbbells, the defenseless dumbbell. So after all those warm-up sets, first round of the superset, I'm going for 10 to 15 reps using a slightly fast explosive tempo. Now, if you're familiar with the channel, you'll see that I've slowed down my tempo a little bit. I was going a little too crazy with the fast tempo, and I need to add a little more control into the eccentric. And the range of motion's a little better here too. I'm extending a little bit fuller. On the first set, I got 15 reps. You're seeing set rounds 2 and 3 here, not the first round, but I got 15 reps. And then I'm resting a full 5 minutes. And then I'm going over to my bicep exercise, the standing easy bar curls, and I'm going for 10 to 15 reps to failure again. In this case, first round, I think I got 14. Okay, and then I'm going to rest another 5 minutes. And that's one round of the superset or the alternating set structure. And I'm going to repeat that twice more for a total of 3 rounds. Triceps to failure in the 10 to 15 rep range with a slightly fast explosive tempo. Rest 5 minutes. Biceps to failure in the 10 to 15 rep range with a slightly fast explosive tempo. Rest 5 minutes. Repeat. 3 rounds total. Now, you might be thinking the 5-minute rest is extensive, but you're only doing 3 rounds of this. So it's not really going to take you that long. This whole workout can be done in less than an hour. After this, if you've completed those 3 rounds, this is kind of the meat of the session where we're trying to gain strength in the arms, which I've seen to be, in my personal experience, the most potent stimulus for additional growth. So that's why the rest time is longer. That's why the tempo is slightly fast and explosive. And that's why the intensity is at the maximum as well. You should be chasing an additional rep each workout. And then once you get to the top of the rep range, 15 reps, 16 reps, bump that weight up, let the reps fall back down, start chasing reps again with that weight till you get back up to the top of the rep range, repeat that process over and over again. But after we've done that part of the session at the beginning of the workout where we're not overly focused on getting a pump, it's mostly about strength, we're going to transition to prioritizing a pump at the end of the workout. Okay. And so to do this, we're going to do a drop set. I'm going to do a tricep exercise again. In this case, I'm limited. I can only do the overhead extension. So I'm doing overhead dumbbell again, but you could pick a new tricep exercise if you want to. Again, it doesn't really matter which movement you pick. And I'm going to choose a weight that I can get 20 to 30 reps with a quite fast explosive tempo, going down to partials at the end. That's what I'm going to start with. So in this case, it's a 70-pound dumbbell for me. And then I'm going to do a drop set. I'm going to go down to the 45 and do another 10 to 20 reps with fast explosive tempo going down to partials. And then I'm going to immediately drop down to the 30-pound dumbbell. So 70, 45, 30. So it's a drop set with 3 weights. You could say 2 drops. Your first set, you drop once, and then you drop again one more time. 3 sets total. Fast explosive tempo, 10 to 30 reps, aiming to, get 20 plus ish, and going down to partials at the end. And then I'm going to rest just 1 minute. So now the rest times are short because I'm not as worried about recovery. I'm trying to optimize for pump, not for strength anymore. I'm going to go do the same thing for biceps. In this case, I'm doing hammer curls. So the first set of that, I think I'm using the 30s, and I'm pumping them for, 25 to 30 reps, going down to partials at the end. I immediately drop down to my bicep is like so sore while I'm talking about this. I was holding this and I'm like slowly extending it, trying to maintain composure, discussing, giving thy disciples the arm gospel of the day. Like, holy frick. So where was I? We're going from the 30s to failure, and then down to partials at the end, an intensity technique. And then I'm dropping the weight, another intensity technique. I'm going to go down to the 15s, which is pretty light. Pump them again for like 10, 15, 20 reps, down to partials at the end. And then I'm going to drop down to the 10s for a third set. Pump all the way to failure, down to partials at the end. That's 1 round. And I'm going to repeat that once more. So then I'm going to rest another minute, and I'm going to do that same thing 1 more time. The triceps, triple drop set with partials, with fast explosive tempo in the 15 to 30 rep range, let's say. Rest a minute. Same thing with biceps and the hammer curls. And that's the workout. And you're going to have a skin splitting pump. So I highly encourage you to try this workout, but I am not saying that it's not evidence-based. It's not scientifically reviewed. Okay. This is what I've found to be an effective way of training based on my experimentation. And the reason that I think self-experimentation has treated me very well is that the majority of the scientific literature is focused on the intermediary group of people. So what is going to work best for most people on average? Okay, I think most of the scientific outcomes point towards that. And once you get more extreme, I started to notice a lot of the scientific recommendations to become less helpful for me. As you get more to become more and more of an outlier, you get more extreme. If you're continuing to pour in, chase more and more gains, these general rules vindicated through scientific study become less powerful, I found. And eventually I discovered that just trying different stuff and seeing how my body responds to it personally was my most effective tool for continuing to produce growth. And when it comes to some of the things in this program that may be, let's say, slightly unorthodox, like the faster explosive tempo or the 5-minute rest time, or even the 10 to 15 rep range, that's higher than some people want to do, or at the end of the workout, the drop sets with the partials with the 30 reps. I'm not choosing any of these things based on a personal preference for any individual method. It's completely based off of trial and error over many years, and then self-assessment, which I'm not going to be perfectly objective of my own results. I do my best to assess what's leading to growth because I want to find the strategies that work the best. So this style of workout is been built up from experimentation and noticing things like a faster explosive tempo and a longer rest time to produce more strength, which coincides quite tightly in my experience with more muscle growth. And then a drop set structure with partials and a higher rep range, also using fast tempo to lead to the biggest pump possible. And that's a fun way to end the workout. And also, I think there's something to be said about getting as much blood in the muscle as you can in terms of producing growth. And I think marrying these two strategies together of focusing on strength and then focusing on pump at the end of the workout is the most productive cocktail for arm growth that I've seen so far. Important thing to also note in here is that it's not a fixed end thing. This is 100% the best way to train because I'm going to continue to experiment. I'm going to continue to try different methods and assess what happens. For example, the slow, controlled eccentric tempo, which has become very popularized lately and supported by scientists. Dr. Mike, Renaissance periodization being one of the main ones. First off, I've done an extensive dive into the literature to assess if there was scientific evidence for that, and there never was. And that kind of came out, in the past 6 months or whatever, in Jeff Nippard's video, when he looks through the science and asks Mike about it. Why do we keep talking about slow eccentrics? There's no scientific evidence that proves that this leads to more muscle growth. Secondly, I subscribe to that methodology because these are smart, accredited people. Who am I to say that I know a better way to train than they do? Like, let me try it. And I used a slow eccentric and a slow controlled tempo for an extended period of time and kind of drop the weight down a little bit, really focus on the stretch. And I didn't see growth. And as soon as I used a slightly more fast explosive tempo, not only did I start to see growth, I started to see strength increase. And so that's the reason that I've come to the conclusion and that I'm currently practicing my arm sessions with a faster explosive tempo. Not all the time, but for most of my sets, because I continually notice that my body responds to this methodology. And so anything that I suggest to you guys in these videos comes from that type of root or base where I don't care if it's recommended by a scientist, recommended by a bodybuilder, or a power lifter. If it seems like it could be effective, I will try it. And I'm going to let my body tell me if it works for growth or not. And obviously, that's not a perfect science, but I think I'm reasonably is that a word? Reasonably competent at assessing whether or not a certain training structure leads to growth in my arms. And over many, many years of this, because I'm hyper analytical and always focusing and always kind of in the workshop of tweaking and changing and theorizing what could I try differently and then assessing my results, I think I've developed a fairly strong framework for detecting what types of methods do seem to produce growth and what types of methods don't. Over time, you can pick up on the trends. And so what I think is valuable in terms of me sharing my experience to you guys is that if you value somebody's personal experience to get a result, then I'm trying to give you a very transparent access to that. But not everybody's going to agree with that, right? And that's this whole back and forth with science-based lifting versus me or other people, as like a meathead. And I realize that it's not everybody's going to want to agree with me, and that's okay. But in my experience, the more advanced you get with lifting, I think the experience-based advice becomes more practical. The more beginner, the more intermediary you are, I think probably the scientific consensus is more accurate because that's usually what they're studying with people that are intermediate or beginner, or even if they're considered advanced, they're not really an extreme outlier that's like doing some of the crazy things that I'm doing, for example. So the conclusions that they get apply to that kind of middle of the distribution, that 80% of the population. And for better or worse, that's not my world, right? I'm on the extreme end that I don't think most of the things that I'm doing aren't being replicated by science. Exactly. And so that's why I think that some of the more extreme outcomes are better supported by people's personal experience. And I try to do as good of a job as I can at being an objective reviewer of my own experience as I apply more and more extreme or different approaches to myself to continue to get further growth. And, I'm not saying that my physique or my arm growth is like at the pinnacle of it, but I started with 13 and a half inch arms. I wasn't, even in my high school, I played sports and I can name like three of my friends that were more jacked than me. Like, and I don't think I have like outlier, like freakazoid genetics necessarily. And then when I started training, like I saw a pretty similar rate of growth. Like I gained maybe 10 pounds in the first year, which is good, but newbie gains, and if you're consistent and you actually push hard, like that's very attainable. And that's pretty consistent with like what a lot of people will get from the gym if they really go after it. So saying all that to kind of show that getting my arms up to 18 inches completely natural, I think I've found or stumbled upon some different methods that can be useful for people that want to take advice from what somebody else did to get X result, the personal experience aspect of it. And then now, starting low doses of testosterone, starting TRT, it's made a fairly substantial difference in being able to add an additional half inch and gain more muscle there as well. So far, I've noticed kind of the same methods to be effective. Like I haven't really found like, you know, being on TRT or changing my hormone levels to lead to like completely different outcomes where, before doing this rep range and this amount of volume or this intensity led to growth. And now that I'm, uh, augmenting my hormones some, the result is completely different. Everything seems to be relatively consistent so far. And maybe I can talk about that more in other videos, but part of the reason I haven't delved deep into that is because it's a very serious decision for anybody to make, and I'm not really prepared to start actively influencing. And the idea would be to educate and share my experience, which I would like to do, but I'm hesitant to full blown just talk about it openly 100% because I'm not I'm still quite new to it. So I'm not an expert. So, even though I think maybe this or that or this result has happened, or there's a lot of things I've realized, even in the 3.5 months that I've been doing it, but it's only 3.5 months. And deciding to change your hormones, whether it's to do, a low dose of testosterone, TRT, or do a full blown steroid cycle or whatever you're looking at, it's a serious, serious decision. I think a lot of people don't take the time to educate themselves properly and try to digest what the long term consequences are and assess if it's really the right move for them. And so for that reason, I'm just hesitant because I'm so new to this that I don't know exactly what the long term trends and truths are confidently enough that I would want to openly, make recommendations or share or talk about it. But at the same time, I want to be transparent in what I'm doing and not, lie to you guys and not, say that, oh, I just started eating more beef and cheese and changed my rep range. And that's how I got another half inch. I was pretty much stuck at 18 inches for like a year and a half, tried everything I could possibly think of. And a different lever that I could pull was to consider altering my hormones some. And that's something I was quite resistant to for a long time and didn't want to do. But it basically got to the point where I felt like I had exhausted all of my other potential options. Extreme volume workouts, 100 sets in a session, training arms every day, lower volume, lower frequency, high tempo or fast tempo, slow tempo, like any different training structure. I found, I eventually got to the point where I was like, I don't think I have any new ideas, or I'm not seeing anything else that I could even try. So, anyways, that's kind of a rant for a different video. But yeah, that's the arm routine that I did today. If you guys find these, specific details of a workout to follow useful, comment and I can do more of them. And, my arm course gives you access to like I don't even know how many. There's 3 different kind of programs. The fuck sleeves is more beginner. That was the first course I made back in like 2020. And then the how to build massive arms is like there's like 23 video lessons if you really want to learn and like absorb the fundamentals as I've experienced and seen them. That course is going to be really good for you. And then Armzilla, I added that just last year, 2024, which I think is geared more towards a more advanced lifter and the techniques are more extreme. And I think I'm going to add another, like I'm continuously adding content and adding programs. And when you sign up, you get lifetime access for $40. So I think it's a fairly reasonable deal if you're a nut about growing your arms. But I think I'm going to add another program called Pumpocalypse sometime maybe in 2025. So again, if I can't provide the consistency or the intensity for you, and those are going to be your main drivers of growth. But even if you hit those marks, you can still end up plateauing. And I've done that. And I think if I could give myself the arm course and the condensed down of like, hey, these are all the different things that like I lab ratted myself with or experimented with, in these previous times when I was younger and plateaued, I think it would have been immensely helpful because sometimes you do need to find a way to evolve and progress your training. And that's what the arm course is very useful for. But there's no magic pill, and working out is not that complicated. But if you are very, very serious and you are training with consistency and with high intensity, then I think it can help to, give you like guardrails for how to make sure that you keep evolving your training. You don't slip into plateaus, you don't stagnate, uh, type of thing. So check that out if you're freaking interested, and leave a comment of what you think. I read the comments. I have been. I mean, sometimes I think I got to stop because anytime I make a video critiquing any of the science lifters, like I just get eviscerated. Like people are so mad at me. Like it's great. If you guys go back to like the recent Dr. Mike video I made about the arm day and how he thinks you shouldn't do an arm day. And at the end of the day, man, there's a lot of different ways to lift. Like, yeah, maybe there's some validity to what he's saying, but anyways, you can go watch that video, and people are just like, some people are supportive and like get it as I see it, but and the funny thing is, it's not like they directly oppose the arguments I'm making. Is the like interesting thing? They just attack me personally. So it's like, okay, like, it's like insults. Like, you don't have any views. Like, you don't have a PhD. Like, you're just an asshole. Like, you're fake laughing and being cringy. Like, it's just all stuff like as if I like insulted somebody's family. That's what it would make me think of, and the way they're reacting. Like, they're so upset and they're so hurt and they're so like pissed off by what I'm saying. It's just crazy to see, man. And there's very little like the pushback that I'm totally open to is, oh, your critique of him in this argument and this, I disagree because of this reason or that reason, and we can kind of go back and forth, and I can see like where you think differently and why you think differently, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I'm not expecting, that's like a constructive disagreement or feedback. And I look at that and I'm like, that makes sense. Like, I see how that person's thinking. I see where they're coming to that conclusion. And, maybe there is a place for them to push back against this argument I'm making for this reason and that reason. And that actually follows like a logical path that's aimed at digesting, where the truth is around these ideas in terms of training for arm growth. The 95% of the pushback is just like aimed at me personally. Like, it's just personal attacks on my character. I'm like, okay, like, I don't, if that's what you guys want to do, go ahead. Like, but yeah, it's just like, wow, I never like, yeah, it's just surprising because I never realized people were that like emotional or like that, like would be that hurt about something like that. Um, and it kind of makes me pause and be like, maybe I shouldn't do these because like I don't want to make people feel like super negatively emotionally where they want to write a whole essay about how I'm the worst person on earth. Like, I don't, clearly that's causing you a ton of distress, and that's not really the influence that I want to have. My goal with video like that is to try to get people to think more critically about the information being presented. Like what I see with Dr. Mike is that he's extremely intelligent, he's extremely charismatic, he's funny, and he's but people are, for those reasons, like his credentials, his intelligence, his charisma, his humor, people see him as an authority, and then they just blanket like this is law. Everything he says is how working out works. And I think it's uh, a problem when at times his content is motivated by what's going to get me the most views, which is that's fine. We're all making content. I get it. But when people are just blindly subscribing to him because he's a doctor and a PhD, and then some of his content that he puts out, like the Arm Day is Dead video, is it's there's no sign like all the claims he's making don't have scientific evidence literature behind them. Like I didn't not a single uh, study cited, and like some of the claims, like I know there's no science, there isn't even science on that. So a lot of it is just opinion based. And then as a creator, when you understand like the vulnerabilities of the fitness niche, especially people that are beginner to intermediate, it's like any time you come up with like a novel creative, like there's just this new piece of information that you need to know to understand, like people eat that shit up, but it's not the information that actually produces more results for them. And I've experienced that myself. And then you realize like, wow, like people, they want to hear, just like that there's some easier, crafty, like doctor prescribed wacky way to get more arm growth, and this like crazy rearranged split and these like crazy ideas of like a bicep pump impeding your tricep range of motion, limiting your growth, and your biceps healing faster than your tricep. But there's no scientific evidence for any of this stuff. These are all just potential theoretical ideas that I think most people who are lifting consistently like would question and be like, I don't like, why are you saying that? That doesn't make sense. But we just present all these kind of crafty, like nuanced things. And I'm a doctor, and now rearranging your split to do all this stuff is what's going to work. And it's like, to me, it's just you're theoretically cooking up something that sounds like it could be better on paper, but contrasting it with my practical experience, which again doesn't mean that I'm a completely right about my conclusions either. Like I like have seen completely things he's suggesting to be not effective. I've seen the complete opposite actually sometimes. And so that's where I'm like, hey, here's my take. Like take it as you will. Like I'm not a scientist. This isn't being scientifically studied, but I'm in the gym, dedicated, obsessed with growing my arms. I've continuously been experimenting and then trying to assess what results I get and share them with you. And in some instances, I'm also creating content, so I'm experiencing the same thing where I get the temptation or the desire to want to make content that sells and gets views and clicks. And like for example, arm training, if I talk about the anatomy of the biceps and how the two heads are different, therefore we need to do different people go nuts for that. And they're like buying programs and the views are crazy. But I'm like, this is stupid. This isn't I've never seen this to actually lead to growth. That's not like the two heads are very similar. You could find some tiny, small anatomical truth and then blow it up as if it's significant and make a prescription that's more complicated than it actually needs to be. And the person who's not that familiarized with lifting buys it because they want something that's like an easy, novel, comfortable, makes them feel good prescription. Um, but that's not always the best information. And so, yeah, I don't know. That was a rant and a half, but that's why sometimes I think it's necessary to make my own videos and pushing back. And I think a lot of people would just see me as like a meathead idiot who's training arms. And, on the surface, Dr. Mike is a PhD of exercise science, and they don't see the nuance of, what's happening with content, and they don't value personal experience. And I get it, right? Like, why would the average person want to listen to me over him, right? Because he's a scientist. So I understand why people, would push back. But yeah, the last thing I'll just come back to is that it's just crazy to see how emotional people are. And it's like, it makes me think of like a cult where like you're so attached to this like leader that you like and love, and any criticism of them like, I don't, yeah, I don't, it's surprising that like working out and like a source of information for working out, you'd have this like political ideological attachment to, I wouldn't have expected that. It's like, we're talking about like sets and reps and split structures. Like, let's just keep it about the information. If you disagree with the information, make a case. Right? There's many cases to be made about what I'm saying that you could make to oppose it, and I'm willing to hear all of them. Right? Like, let's talk about that. Why are we why are you just going to insults? And it's just eye opening to see that a lot of people, are that's how a lot of people operate, and a lot of people are, consuming science-based lifting content with like a tribal, like political ideology of like, this is their hero, they're a fan of this person, and this person's so right no matter what, that I'm going to argue with anybody that opposes them. Like, and I don't really care what the logical argument is, because I'm going to argue on tactics of insulting your character rather than addressing the issue or the facts, which that's the world we're in, I guess. So anyways, that was just a rant. Those of you that support and leave positive feedback, it is encouraging. And I just want to make sure that you guys realize that I'm coming from a place where like, I'm not just like anti-science because I'm a gym bro and I don't know, right? Like, it's my take on it is that there is a lot of benefit of the science, and I think it most applicably applies to the median chunk of people. But I think there's limitations, and then I think you got to consider content motivations and how people are kind of leveraging science just to get more views and clicks and take advantage of this constant sort of vulnerability in fitness, is that people want the results, but they don't want the harsh reality of the process. That's always been there, even before social media was big. It's like working as a trainer, I saw that immediately. It's like the majority of people, they want the result, but they don't like, if you start telling your clients the reality, which I started doing, I stopped getting new clients, because I'd be like, okay, this is your goal. Like, all right, this is realistically what you're going to have to do. You make some changes in your life. You're going to cut this person out, cut that person out. You're going to have to learn to suffer and love. And they just like, I never hear from them again. They're like, holy shit, like, that guy's psychotic. I'm like, that's the truth, man. Take it or leave it. All right, let's leave it there. Check out the ARM program if you want to juicify your pipe daddies. I feel like I had something else I wanted to say, but we rambled on for gosh dang half an hour, so let's cut it there. Have a great day, people.